One final snippet on constitutional history in the Wilson years, which involves the treaty-making power, the war-making power, and more broadly the international affairs power, and whether it's primarily resides with the president or the Congress. And the backdrop to this is the end of World War One, the decision to negotiate a peace treaty to end the war. Wilson personally travels to Paris to negotiate that treaty. In the run-up to the 1918 elections, the Democrats have a majority in the Senate, which is critical because even though to get a treaty approved in the Senate, you need 2/3 of the vote. Having a majority in the Senate means, as we're seeing now in the Biden years, it means that the party in power controls the floor of the Senate. They can prioritize things. And if the Democrats have been able to keep control of the Senate in 1918, they might have been able to quickly bring the treaty to the floor and sort of push it through in the immediate aftermath of the euphoria associated with the end of the war. But they are unable to do so. The states that are in red are states that flip from Democrat to Republican in the 1918 election. There's one state, Massachusetts, that flips the reverse. And then finally here in pink, there's Wisconsin also flips from Republican to Democrat. It was a special election caused by the death of the Democratic incumbent in Wisconsin, a man named Paul Husting, who accidentally shot himself and later died in a hunting accident of all things. And this is a reminder of the way in which sort of odd, unexpected developments can change the course of history. If Husting hadn't gone hunting, there's no special election in Wisconsin. If there's no special election in Wisconsin, the result of the 1918 Senate elections would have been 48 Democrats and 48 Republicans. If it had been 48-48, the vice president would have cast the tie-breaking vote, and the Democrats would have organized the Senate, sort of what's occurring now in the Senate, although it's 50-50 with Harris casting the tie-breaking vote. But that doesn't happen. Husting is dead. The seat goes Republican, so Republicans have a majority, and the Republicans will do everything they can to block Wilson's peace. The majority leader of the Senate and also the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee is this man, Henry Cabot Lodge, who was a Republican senator from Massachusetts, a strong critic of Wilson's vision of international affairs. Wilson, fancied himself to be an idealistic figure. He champions international organizations, the League of Nations, as a way of handling with things. Lodge is much more of a realist. He basically says, look, in international affairs, we shouldn't care too much about principles. We should just be aligning with countries with whom we share a common strategic interest. Wilson initially doesn't listen to Lodge. The result is the negotiation of a treaty called the Treaty of Versailles, which creates a League of Nations, sort of the forerunner to the UN, which will be based in Geneva, which will be governed by a covenant, basically a constitution, that Wilson is the primary drafter. And the two key elements of this, the first one, Article 10. The members of the League undertake to respect and preserve as against external aggression the territorial integrity and existing political independence of all members of the League. In the case of any such aggression or in case of any threat of aggression, Council shall advise the means by which this obligation shall be fulfilled. This is a principle called collective security. It's in the UN Charter as well, although there's a limitation in terms of the UN. Wilson's argument here is, look, think what happened in World War I when Germany invades Belgium. If Germany knew before it invaded Belgium that every other country in the world would come to Belgium's aid, the result of this would have been that Germany never would have invaded Belgium. So Wilson's argument is, look, this is basically it's a deterrent effect in terms of preventing war. Lodge and conservative Republicans argued, we don't think so. Congress declares war, and they say that Article 10 basically seizes from Congress the authority to declare war. And both sides have an argument here. And then there's Article 11. Any threat of war, threat of war, whether immediately affecting any member of the League or not, is hereby declared a matter of concern to the whole League, and the League shall take any action that may be deemed wise or effectual to safeguard the peace of nations. And if there's an emergency, the Secretary General, on the request of any member of the League, can deal with this. I'm emphasizing this for a reason. It's also declared to be the friendly right of each member of the League to bring to the attention of the League of Nations Assembly a situation that might disturb international peace. This seems entirely anodyne. I mean, there's sort of nothing really there. But it's seized upon by the left-wing critics in the Senate: Robert La Follette, George Norris, Astley Grant. I mean, these people who had opposed World War I, who see the hand of business and imperialism and militarism, and they see what they see in Article 11 is, look, in the aftermath of the war, the League of Nations created a system of mandates in Africa and the Middle East, basically colonies. Um, and in the left-wing critics' mind, Article 11 was creating a system in which American troops would be summoned by the League of Nations Council to act on behalf of colonial powers suppressing anti-colonial revolts. Why is that, they say? Because this is the right to invoke Article 11 is confined to a member of the League. So in a situation, say, where France was facing a colonial rebellion in Syria, which was a French mandate. France is a member of the League. Syria is not a member of the League. So France could, as a member of the League, could bring the Syrian situation to the attention of the League and lead to the introduction of troops. It may seem a little conspiratorial and crazy. It turns out to a certain extent right. There was a rebellion in Syria in the 1920s that the League sort of got involved under Article 11 with precisely this approach. But the key thing for our purposes is that in terms of congressional authority over war, Wilson's proposed peace deal is attacked simultaneously from the right and from the left, and it makes it much harder for him to successfully get two-thirds support. And ultimately, the treaty goes down to defeat. The United States will never join the League of Nations. So that's the first area. The second war-making area comes due to the specter of the Russian Revolution. So here's Lenin. The Russian Revolution, of course, occurs as a result of World War I. So in the last, it's 1917, so the last year of the war, there's also the civil war that's going on in Russia, and the Russians ultimately withdraw from the war when the Bolsheviks, the communists, take power. So in 1919, the Bolsheviks control this yellow area on the map, but the green areas on the map are controlled by white forces, and so-called the anti-communist forces. And there are Allied troops on the ground, British troops in the Caucasus and around Odessa. But American troops, which land at Murmansk in far northern Russia, and ostensibly these troops are there to protect Allied war materiel, military weapons, supplies, and that kind of stuff that had been shared with the Russians when Russia was a participant in the war. But the real purpose of this intervention seems to be to put a thumb on the scale of the Russian Civil War to aid the white forces, the non-communist forces. These are American troops on the ground in Russia during the Civil War, acting as on frequently on behalf of sort of bolstering the white forces. This approach arouses the concern of Republicans, many of them don't like the communists, but they don't like Wilson either, and particularly of progressive Republicans who in some cases are not unsympathetic to Lenin's cause. I mean, the full nature of Lenin's evil is not immediately apparent at this point, and they unite around an amendment sponsored by Hiram Johnson. Remember, we saw him as the governor of California California pushing through the initiative and the referendum. By this point, he's been elected to the Senate, and he proposes an amendment to the military appropriations bill in 1920 that would cut off funds for the Russian intervention. The measure fails on a tie vote, 33 to 33. The Wilson administration figures, look, we may very well see the funds get pulled off, and as a result, they withdraw U.S. forces from Russia. For our purposes, what's significant about the Johnson Amendment is the idea of Congress using the power of the purse, using its appropriations power to shape, affect, bring to an end executive military intervention abroad. We've seen this one other time in the course, sort of, the Collamer Amendment dealing with the water witch in Paraguay. Remember when Buchanan was trying to get the United States involved in the Paraguayan War? But this is a pattern that we're going to see several times in the 20th century. Appear in the 1920s, appear in the Vietnam era. Congress basically saying, even a very ambitious executive that wants to push the envelope in terms of executive power in international affairs, at the end of the day, if Congress cuts off the funds, that marks an end to the process. There's a tremendous backlash to Wilson's approach to international affairs and to Wilson's presidency in general. And the result is that in the 1920 election, it's an overwhelming Democratic defeat. The Democrats lose even, a southern state in Tennessee. They carry no real support outside of the South. The Democratic presidential nominee, the governor of Ohio, John Cox, gets under 35% of the vote, just an extraordinarily bad performance. And that will set up the stage for events of the 1920s, which will be the subject of our snippets for next time. So I hope everyone is well and is staying safe, and I will talk to you soon.